Have you ever wondered how the Americas came to be, or who originally lived on these continents? Today's podcast will discuss the first Americans and the civilizations they built. Be sure to listen for the question of the day so you can leave your answer in the comments. For the Love of Language and Writing presents U.S. History, the Americas, Part 1, Intermediate Level. Most Native American origin stories say that Native nations have always called the Americas home. However, some scholars believe that between 9 and 15,000 years ago, a land bridge existed between Asia and North America. The first people to come to the Americas traveled across this bridge in search of food. When the glaciers melted, water flooded this area, and later settlers came by boat. The settlers eventually filled both North and South America, creating unique cultures. The first Americans, the Olmec. Mesoamerica includes the area north of Panama up to the desert of central Mexico. Although this area had great physical, language, and cultural diversity, the people who lived here shared many similarities. Mesoamericans were polytheistic. Corn formed the basis of their diet. They developed a mathematical system, built huge buildings, and created a calendar that accurately predicted eclipses and solstices. Most importantly, they created the only known written language in the Western Hemisphere. Although the area had no single political structure, long-distance trade helped spread culture. Trade mainly included weapons, jewelry, feathers woven into clothing and ornaments, and cacao beans that were used for a chocolate drink. The most notable Mesoamerican culture was the Olmec. Living from about 1200 to about 400 BCE, before the Common Era, the Olmec produced a number of major works of art, architecture, pottery, and sculpture. Most recognizable are their giant head sculptures and the pyramid in La Venta. The Olmec built channels to bring water into their cities and fields. They grew maize, squash, beans, and tomatoes. They also bred small, domesticated dogs, which, along with fish, provided their protein. Although no one knows what happened to the Olmec after about 400 BCE, their culture was the base upon which the Maya and the Aztec built. The Olmec also developed a system of trade throughout Mesoamerica, giving rise to an elite class. The Maya. Teotihuacan was one of the most populated areas in pre-Columbian America. It was located about 30 miles northeast of modern Mexico City. The large amounts of food that came from agriculture allowed people time to develop skills other than farming. Builders constructed many apartment compounds for multiple families, as well as more than 100 temples. Among these were the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. The city was also the center for trade along Mesoamerica's Gulf Coast. The Maya were strongly connected to Teotihuacan. Living from about 2000 BCE to 900 CE, Common Era, in what is now Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala, the Maya perfected the calendar and written language the Olmec had begun. They created a written mathematical system to record crop yields and the size of the population and to assist in trade. They built the city-states of Copan, Tikal, and Chichen Itza along their major trade routes, as well as temples, statues of gods, pyramids, and astronomical observatories. However, because of poor soil and a drought that lasted nearly 2 centuries, their civilization declined by about 900 CE. When the Spanish arrived in the 1520s, they found Mayan history in the form of glyphs, or pictures representing words, recorded in folding books. In 1562, Bishop Diego de Landa, worried that the native people had returned to their traditional religious practices, collected and burned every book he could find. There are only a few that remain. And now it's time for our question of the day. What do you know about the indigenous or native people of your country? Practice your English by going to the link in the description and leaving a comment. If you find this podcast helpful, please leave a rating and review so it can reach more people like you who are working hard to improve their English. And don't forget to subscribe so you can be notified of new podcasts when they come out. Now, back to the podcast. The Aztec. When the Spaniard Hernán Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico in the 16th century, he heard of a great city filled with gold, ruled by an emperor named Moctezuma. This city was known as Tenochtitlan. According to legend, a warlike people called the Aztec had left a city called Aztlán and traveled south to the site of present-day Mexico City. In 1325, they began construction of Tenochtitlan on an island in Lake Texcoco. By 1519, when Cortés arrived, this settlement contained more than 200,000 inhabitants and was the largest city in the Western Hemisphere. Unlike the dirty cities of Europe at the time, Tenochtitlan was well-planned, clean, and orderly. The city had neighborhoods for specific occupations, a trash collection system, markets, 2 channels bringing in fresh water, and public buildings and temples. Enslaved people from conquered neighboring tribes had built the city and the 3 roads that connected it to the mainland. To farm, the Aztec used boats made of reeds and filled them with soil. The lake provided water for the floating gardens, which are still in use and can be seen today in Xochimilco, a district of Mexico City. Part 2 of the Americas will focus on the Inca of South America, North American native peoples, and the native peoples of the Eastern Woodland. This article has been adapted from The Americas in U.S. History by P. Scott Corbett and others, published by OpenStax in 2014. Access it for free at the link in the description. To download a free worksheet for this article, please visit lovelangwry.com. That's LOVELANGWRI.com. To get this audio and worksheets for all levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced, and TOEFL, please visit the Patreon page at patreon.com/lovelangwry. Thank you for listening, and happy language learning.